Welcome to Self-Funded. I'm your host, Chrissie Francona. 10 years ago, starting a business around yourself was something reserved for celebrities. Today, professionals everywhere are breaking away from the 9-to-5 and building businesses around their own experience and expertise. On this show, we'll explore what it really means to be self-funded, the movement of professionals carving their own path, creating cash-flowing businesses, and building lasting impact without waiting for permission. I'll share my own journey and talk with others who are rethinking what's possible when you take your career into your own hands. Let's dive in. Today on the podcast, I have Taylor Crane, the founder of Fractional Jobs, which is the talent marketplace that helps startups hire fractional leadership talent across more than 10 different functions. We discuss what fractional work actually is and what it's not, how he started working as a fractional head of product, and then turned that into a business that now helps both companies and talent find a fit in the fractional space, and where he sees the fractional space going as part of the broader future of work conversation. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Taylor Crane, welcome to Self-Funded.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Chrissie.
It's great to have you. First off, what is Fractional Jobs?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So Fractional Jobs is the company that I started about 2 years ago now. It is the largest network of fractional executives and fractional talent in the US. So we work with early stage startups and small businesses, and we help them hire fractional leaders, fractional executives, fractional talent across about 10 different function areas. Think like fractional CMOs, fractional CTOs, fractional CFOs, but then all kinds of crazy roles like fractional general counsels or fractional chief compliance officers, et cetera.
Cool. So I feel like I see fractional everywhere. It's all over LinkedIn. It's all over people's profiles. I think you're to blame. But no, I think you've built this incredible platform and following in the space, and so I want to definitely get into your story around it and your experience. But let's start kind of more broadly. How do you define fractional?
Yeah. So fractional work is part-time work. It's typically paid on a monthly retainer, and it's performed by experts in their field. And so if we break those three components down, the part-time work part, I think, is probably pretty obvious. It's where the word fractional literally comes from. Being paid on a monthly retainer, the implication there is that this is an ongoing relationship. It's indefinite. They're embedded into your organization, on a monthly basis. And then the performed by experts in their field, that's kind of the thing that makes fractional, if you will. It's what differentiates fractional from other forms of contract or consulting type work. And the implication there, or the reason that's part of the definition, is we think of fractional as a senior level operator that has deep expertise in something that is coming into your organization to level you up quickly based on their prior experience.
Yeah. So companies are really getting a lot of bang for their buck when they're bringing in someone fractional.
That's exactly the point. Yeah.
Got it. And you mentioned, as you were explaining Fractional Jobs, that you work with, startups and small businesses. You mentioned, who do you typically see as good clients for a fractional model?
Yeah. So if you think about it from the company perspective, like why would a company, why would a founder be hiring fractional? There's really two reasons. Either if you have a need for like senior level work, of some kind, but the need is not for 40 hours a week, so it's not a full-time need, or you don't have the budget for a full-time hire. And both of those things tend to be much, much more common in earlier stage companies or smaller companies. And so the kinds of companies that are adopting fractional work more frequently are going to be early stage startups. Think of it like pre-seed, seed, Series A stage startups, and then small businesses of all shapes and sizes. Larger companies, like think of Meta as like a silly example, like Meta has all the budget in the world, so that's never going to be a problem for them. And like there's presumably so much that can be done at Meta that like the idea of saving money or being like, kind of ruthless in your team construction and cost saving is like, it just doesn't really apply to a company of that size. And so that's why we think of it as more applicable to smaller companies.
Well, and I think that you bring up an interesting point too. Like a Meta, for example, uses thousands, if not tens of thousands of contractors, but you often think about the notion of a contractor in a large company as being something that is often not as experienced talent level and more, hey, we bring on, contractors for customer support center as an example. What you're talking about is more of like at the executive level.
Definitely true. Yeah. So that's why the Meta example becomes especially silly when you think about, them hiring like a fractional, CFO or something like that.
Yeah.
All kinds of, not just executives, but all kinds of leadership oriented work or very senior level work. I think that would also apply for. I'm sure that like at a company like Meta, like if they had like a skunkworks project they're working on and they need like a designer that has significant, leadership experience in AI, just like kind of some niche, and like it could certainly make sense for them to bring in someone for a skunkworks type project. But I think it's more of the edge case. And when we think about like broadly speaking, who is adopting, fractional hiring and bringing in fractional leaders, it's going to be folks that actually need, for example, a fractional CFO or a fractional CTO, again, smaller companies.
Makes sense. I mentioned I do see this label everywhere, whether it's in job descriptions or on people's LinkedIn profiles. What do you find like when you see something and you say like, what is fractional not to you?
Oh yeah. Okay. So like, I think there's a few ways to go with that. Like, we can talk about fractional is not freelance, right? Or like it's if we think of it like a Venn diagram where set circles, like it's it is not junior level work, it is not project based work, it's not consulting. Oftentimes we think of consulting as like, and I know that you spent 7 years at Bain, so I'm going to tread carefully here, but we often think of consulting as like we're putting together decks and recommendations, and then like it's up to the team to actually execute on that strategy. That's also not fractional. Fractional is really about bringing in someone to set the strategy, do the work, own the work, and deliver the work, et cetera. And then this might sound obvious, but sometimes does need to be said. Fractional work is not full-time work. So, if you hire someone fractionally, you do not have them full-time. And I sometimes find myself having to remind companies hiring of that.
It's like, we'd like someone fractional for 40 hours a week. It's like, well, that's not fractional. That's actually 100% of the pie.
Yeah, like we want to save money, right? So we're going to hire a fractional CMO for 10 hours a week, but we're actually going to give them 40 hours a week of work. It just doesn't work that way, unfortunately.
Yeah,
so
no, I'm sure that's a challenge that people encounter. No, you bring up an interesting point on consulting, and certainly no offense taken at all. I mean, part of what I saw working in what I call like big consulting, which is what I would describe Bain, BCG, McKinsey, et cetera, as is, I think a lot of the companies that you're targeting, and even the companies I work with, more growth stage companies at the long game, but I do see the traditional notion of consulting, I think, gets a bad rap in startup and scale up companies, because it is often seen as like, hey, you're just putting a deck together. Whereas like the work I'm doing is, no, we're actually in there like supplementing your team and driving actual projects and so forth. And so it's funny, like I actually struggle with sometimes what to call. I tend to call it more project-based work because that tends to be what we do. But yeah, it's the term consultant gets a bad rap, but technically some of the fractional jobs probably do fall in the consultant/contractor bucket from even just a paperwork perspective. I
mean, just to be clear, I would say that fractional work is a type of consulting work. Yeah. We're actually being technical here. Like it is a type of consulting. It's just like, practically speaking, when one thinks about consultant, it would, we want to differentiate what the type of fractional work looks like in practice. But yeah, it is all within the broader umbrella of you are a 1099 contractor when you do fractional work. So that is a fact.
There's lots of Venn diagrams at play here, and I have not quite figured out like what I feel like it's Beautiful Minds territory of like all these circles that you could draw on a wall. So
I want to make a point there actually. Like I think a lot of the space spends a lot of time talking and debating about the meaning of the word fractional versus consultant versus freelance, et cetera. And I think my perspective is at the end of the day, like we're all like, it's all marketing and positioning. We're all trying to like just communicate the kinds of work that we do or want to be doing, and for one reason or another, folks have really gravitated towards the word fractional and they identify with it strongly. And it has a meaning that is evolving over time as well. It's not like a static thing. And I think that's okay. I think it's like, I actually enjoy seeing the word evolve and like what it actually means.
Yeah, and I think sometimes it's I like your notion of it being positioning and so forth. And I think about it as like, what's the value to the customer, meaning the company that's, bringing you on. And, fractional to me is exactly what you were saying earlier of like your earlier stage, you eventually need a full-time CFO, but you don't have the budget or necessarily the work to justify hiring someone as a full-time employee. So fractional is a great opportunity to get that like high leverage, high experience talent in that fits the need of the company. So no, that makes a lot of sense. Let's get a little bit more into your journey. I know you have a really interesting background, and you started actually as a fractional head of product. That was your first like entree into the space. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. Like I was a PM for 10 years at early stage startups. I started my first company in 2020. That was a venture-backed company. I started doing fractional work in 2023. And I spent about a year as a fractional head of product working with about 2 to 3 startups at a time, acting effectively as their head of product. Yeah.
How did you find, I'm curious, like from a product perspective, because I feel like I'm more of a strategy and ops person. So, my stuff, you would kind of put more into that, like illustrative back office, category. As you thought about kind of pitching yourself as a fractional head of product, oftentimes like product is one of the core, founding team roles. How did you find a fit there?
Yeah, so I think it's a great question. I have a lot of thoughts on this. Let me first describe what my own positioning was, and then maybe I'll step it up a bit more broadly to talk about what it means. So my positioning as a fractional head of product, I said the following. I'm a fractional head of product that works with early stage startups, typically with non-technical founders. Okay. And I constructed that for a couple of reasons. Number one, it spoke to, I think, my strength the most. Like all of my work experience has been with 0 to 1 stage startups. And I also felt like, and across industries, by the way. So I didn't pick like an industry vertical, like I'm a health tech, head of product. And then I also felt like I kind of uniquely had an ability to help non-technical founders approach building software. I just thought it was like something that I seemed to be good at. And so that is how, that's how I chose to position myself. And I think it worked quite well. And so now to answer your question of like, well, isn't product core to any startup? Like, how can someone do it fractionally? Let's look at like the clients that I worked with most, and then again, I'll step it up more broadly. I tended to work with founders that were non-technical, that were subject matter experts in their field. And so, like, I worked with a legal tech startup for like something like 9 months.
I was just thinking legal. It's funny you say that. I was like, oh, legal, yeah.
Another one, an ed tech startup where the CEO was like a educator for 25 years. Very cool. There was a mental health startup. So like these are folks that are like have deep domain expertise. In all 3 cases, actually, they happen to be solo founders as well, and they're building software. And so now the question becomes, okay, like, well, are they going to be the head of product? And often, historically, the answer has been yes. And I would argue, as a product person, very strongly that is a very suboptimal outcome. It is far, far better to have a head of product for 10 hours a week than to have no head of product at all, or for a founder with 0 product software technology experience to try and do it themselves. I think that leads to disaster very often. And so if these startups had unlimited money and unlimited resources, they hire a full-time head of product, go for it. But like, you don't have that, right? And so I think that I was able to be very effective with just about 5 to 10 hours a week of work with these companies. Does that make sense?
Totally. And as you're describing that, I'm seeing this model in which that subject matter expert, you're sort of downloading their brain and then translating it into product specs and then working with the engineers on what that looks like. But their value add certainly is the subject matter. And then I imagine they're really working on go-to-market through their industry relationships. Yeah.
And like with the legal tech startup in particular, like coming to me with like, I didn't have a legal background, right? So coming to me with like sort of like, acting as the SME and coming with like, here's like broadly speaking the requirements. Let's figure out how to turn this into a product that that makes sense. And so yeah, I think it for a lot of reasons, like those relationships that I had, I think it made a lot of sense. I want to step it up a level too. I want to something I've noticed in the fractional world that I kind of find amusing is that I talk with folks that are interested in breaking into fractional work or even skeptical of it on either side, and they say things like, they take a function area and they're like, how can this be done fractionally? Like, doesn't this need to be full time? And what I often notice is that the function area that they focus on is like the thing that can't be done fractionally is the function area that they themselves are the experts in. And so like they think to themselves, like, how can product be done fractionally? Like, because and this was a concern that I had coming in, was like, I live and breathe product. I mean, that is my bread and butter. It's what I love doing. And like, part of me was like, how can it be done fractionally? I mean, like, don't you need to like be, just like immersing yourself in the product?
Living in it, yeah.
And then so I found that with operations as well. I think operations folks have said that to me as well. I've heard that from marketing, which is ironic because like marketing is one of the most popular areas to be done fractionally. And then I think the list goes on. I think finance is like maybe because it's been around for so long. I think people are super comfortable like just acknowledging that like a fractional CFO is a very common thing and can be done fractionally. It makes a lot of sense. But for like most other function areas, at least some of the folks that are experts in that area tend to have this concern about their own area. And then they think about, oh yeah, but product, that can be done fractionally, but like operations, oh no, that's how the company scales. How can you do it anyway, you get the point.
That's funny. Yeah. And I feel like one of the things I've heard as a pushback to fractional is, well, I really need this person to be a part of my team. It's like, well, they are a part of your team. They're just not, they're a part of your team for 50% of their, capacity. And I think that argument tends to not consider how much inefficient time you have when you're a full-time employee. It's like, yeah, you fill the time, but could you sometimes do a full-time like employee's job in 20 hours a week? The truth is yes. And totally. I think when you're employing a fractional resource, you're just getting a lot more, I said at the beginning, a lot more bang for your buck.
I think this pushback is funny to me. And what I often think about and what I often say to folks that are hiring is like, there's nothing magical that happens at hour number 40 that makes someone bought into your organization and like, with your mission and,
diminishing returns, if anything.
If anything, diminishing returns, right? But like, imagine how absurd is it to think that like, oh, at hour number 34, oh, they're just like they're just a contractor, right? But at hour 40, they're thinking about me in the shower, which is something I often hear. Like, I want them thinking about me in the shower, which sounds weird, but I think you understand my point.
Yeah, no, I get it.
But like, nothing like magical happens at like some hours number. So like, it's a spectrum. I think there are diminishing returns, and then when you remove a lot of the bull, I don't know if we're allowed to curse on this podcast, then like you can actually be incredibly productive on 20 hours a week or 10 hours a week too. So
totally. That makes a lot of sense. Okay. So let's talk about your transition from being or serving as a fractional head of product to building Fractional Jobs. When did Fractional Jobs start and what was the impetus for it?
So the reason I got into fractional work was I was burned out from my prior startup. Knew that I wasn't ready to start another company. Still wanted to be in the game. Actually, one of the big inspirations was like I saw how in my previous startup's journey, I saw how incredibly important it was to have folks helping you out. Even in small ways. So like not full-time employees, but folks that are helping you, even if it's just introductions or part-time work, et cetera. And I wanted to support other founders on their journey because I knew firsthand how friggin' hard it was
lonely.
To start all the things. And so like, and so that, and then plus me not being ready to start my next company, doing fractional work really spoke to me. And my motivation was always, okay, I'm going to do fractional work and that will give me the time and the space and potentially the ideas to like eventually start my next company. And I'm going to bootstrap it by doing fractional work. So I'm going to, have 20 hours a week of fractional work, spend 20 hours or so a week working on my own ideas and incubating something. And so that is what ended up happening. And even, I guess, like not coincidentally, but maybe ironically is the word, it actually, was in the fractional space itself. So I basically I was so excited about fractional work. I thought it was so cool. And I was so enjoying the work. It was such a breath of fresh air. And then I saw the benefits that companies were getting from actually hiring and leveraging fractional talent. And one thing led to another. And I was like, really what I said to myself was, I think the fractional work movement is going to be huge. I want to make a bet in this space. I have a poker background, a gambling background. So like, I think in bets often. And so like, I said to myself, like, I want to make a bet in this space. I don't exactly know what that bet's going to be yet, but I just want my chips on the table, in this fractional work world. And the opportunity that spoke the most to me was what became Fractional Jobs, or the marketplace to help those that are looking to do fractional work find, the right clients. The hardest part of doing fractional work is not the work itself. Mm-hmm. Not even close. That's the easy part. The hardest part is finding clients. And I felt like you could be the most exceptional product person or CTO or COO ever in the world. Mm-hmm. And the fractional work you have the potential to do is incredible. But if you don't have the network to sustain lead generation for yourself, and build a fractional practice through your own network, you have no chance of being successful, no matter how good you are at your function area. And that just felt like a shame to me. And so that's what Fractional Jobs is trying to solve.
Very cool. No, and that resonates so much with me of the, you can be amazing at the delivery, but if you're going this fractional route, you're basically building a business around yourself, and it requires all the aspects of a business, from BD through admin, through invoicing and cash collection, but delivery being the part that's the part you know how to do. Yeah. It's all the other stuff that you need to figure out. So that's cool that you guys support that. So 2023, you started functioning as a fractional header product. When did Fractional Jobs launch? I
launched it in January 2024 or February 2024, something like that. Yeah.
So you're like less than 2 years in at this point.
Yeah.
Pretty insane growth. Tell me a little bit about kind of the early traction and then where you guys are now.
So when I launched, when I first launched Fractional Jobs, the expectation was that it was going to be a self-service job board in the way that you and I know a job board to be. It's not that at all, by the way. It changed very quickly. I can talk about that in a second, but that's what I thought it was going to be. And in classic PM fashion, I built the MVP in a way that I actually didn't even build the actual job board itself yet. I didn't know. I wanted to test if anyone cared about what I was building. And so I launched it effectively as a newsletter where I would put the jobs in the newsletter instead of having a job board. And when I posted about it on LinkedIn the first day, the site was like, sign up for the newsletter, get jobs sent to your inbox, and also here's some content that I've written about fractional work. And it immediately got quite a lot of traction. I think I had 1,000 subscribers in the first week, which is really solid for a newsletter. And so that was I'm not sure what the right phrasing is, but a domino that impacted a lot of other parts of my strategy going forward. But immediately, so I guess the simple answer to your question is immediately from day one, it was clear that there was traction on the supply side of the marketplace. Then there was a big question about the demand side, which is the company, the hiring side, of the marketplace, and that is still a problem that I spend 80% of my time, working on. But the supply, it was I hit the right moment in time when fractional work was starting to become quite popular. A lot of people were looking to break into it and start doing fractional work. And I also think that my writing, for whatever reason, resonated with folks. And so yeah.
Well, I think part of it is you have the experience. You have been a fractional lead. And so I think that resonates a lot with people, the personal experience around it. So when you started, and I'll tell you why I'm asking this, because it's related to my own experience. There's a little bit of a chicken and egg problem when you're building something that's a two-sided marketplace. You mentioned talent, check, you had 1,000 people sign up in the first week. Then it really focused on building the demand. Did you anticipate that, or how had you thought about that before you launched?
I really, in the tech world, we talk a lot about marketplaces and the challenges of marketplaces, and there's that book, The Cold Start Problem by Andrew Chen, and I just didn't really think about it much before I launched, and then I was like, oh yeah, this is marketplaces are hard. Yeah. And so I was forced to think about it, and I still think a lot about it. It is the demand side is the tough side of the marketplace. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's. I ask from my own experience, launching the long game, which technically is a two-sided marketplace. I would consider it less of a marketplace in that it's not a volume play where I have a bunch of listings so much as it's like larger, more curated projects, but still it's the same notion of like two sides. And so when I launched, I just put it out there to the world of like, hey, I'm taking projects and I'm building this talent network. And I just didn't know what side would hit first. And so I remember just it's probably similar moment of hitting publish on that first LinkedIn post. And this was September of 2024 for me. And so, you know, a few months after you launched, and yeah, you're right. Like the talent response I got was phenomenal. And mine had, you know, mine was like probably a couple hundred in the first week, but had also the barrier of like, I was having people fill out a form of their experience. So it was a little bit more of a barrier and it was a little more specific and focused. But yeah, I wasn't sure which side would hit first, if I'd have projects that I'd need to staff or if I'd have talent that needed projects, and the talent, the BD side has come, but it's taken a lot longer.
Yeah, totally. I think, and that is, I've learned that is the case with all talent marketplaces, at least in today's world. That is how it works.
So talk to me a little bit about maybe some of those early wins. Obviously, from the talent side, phenomenal response. It resonated with people. You had the expertise yourself or the experience. How about on the BD side? Tell me a little bit about kind of those early clients that you built and how you proved out the concept.
Yeah. Okay. Good question. So our early wins on the BD side, like from the start, I am so thankful for the network that I have and have built, over the years. And most of the leads that if I had to look, like I'd say probably like if you look at the first like 10 or 15 companies that I worked with, my guess is probably 80% of them are just immediately just from my network.
Yeah.
And so that, I don't know how much of a win. I mean, I guess that's a win in that, like, thank God I have my, that network.
You had the network, you had the credibility, the relationships. Yeah.
And so I think that was great from the start. I think another win on, less so the BD side, but let's think about it from the company side. Another big win that I learned very, very early is that for reasons that I actually I can't fully articulate or wrap my head around, the best part of the Fractional Jobs experience or product is when I deliver the batch of candidates to a hirer and watch for their reaction. Basically, it's like it's incredible the quality of talent that we have in the Fractional Jobs network. And it's like my absolute joy to be able to bring these folks to clients and just watch the clients. I got an email yesterday from a client with a very, very specific need. And the email was just simply like, wow, simply impressed. And
that's awesome.
So that's been like a consistent theme, and it's a win every time. And like, I wish I could give myself credit for like, somehow architecting that situation. I don't fully understand, why or how, but that's been awesome. Since then I've run a bunch of experiments on the BD side, and like I'm getting some early wins on like LLM based referrals. So like ChatGPT recommending Fractional Jobs, which is cool. It's early. I actually just wrote a LinkedIn post about this, but like there's some traction there. Same thing with Google, just traditional SEO as well. I've had some wins with like VC partnerships, which have been interesting. And maybe this is going to be a slight topic change, because it's not strictly a biz dev win in the sense that I think you're thinking of. But one of the biggest wins, I think, for my business, and like unlocked maybe the biggest learning of my entire business, is in month number like 3 or 4. So like, okay, I launched in month 1. Supply side is great. Tons of interest, right? Got some inbounds from my network that are looking to hire fractional. Okay, great. But like, it was not enough to build a business. And I remember like, in month 1, I think I had like $600 of revenue total. In month number 2, it was like $200 of revenue total for the whole month. And then in month number 3, it was like, I think it was like over 5,000.
Wow.
And here's why. I started getting folks that were interested in advertising in my newsletter to reach the fractional executive audience. And that opened up an entire new revenue stream, which today makes up half of our revenue. And has, if it was not for this, I don't know if Fractional Jobs would be here because the first year, frankly, was like just trying to get this talent marketplace going and like figure out how to make money on it. I iterated on the business model so much, but like what sustained us was building effectively a media business where I have an audience of fractional leaders and I help companies advertise to that audience. And
that's awesome.
That was a mistake. Like not a mistake. I mean, it was like I didn't think about it at all. Yeah, it was a happy accident, as they say.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest wins of the whole business because it unlocked what is now half of our revenue and like I actually think about my business in a lot of ways as a media business that just so happens to place talent.
Smart.
And I think that's a very important framing.
Yeah.
For me.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I mean, especially because what you are offering to talent is both opportunities, but then also content and development around how to do fractional work. And so they come to you as a trusted expert, and whether it's on your website or through social or your emails. And so it makes sense that you would have that, and you have a very specific avatar. And I bet, it's highly educated experience, like a good target for some of the services that now exist in sort of the broader freelance space. So
totally.
I'd love to just understand a little bit more about how the model works. Okay, so advertising is a big piece of this. Makes sense. You built the audience. I'm sure it's like a CPM model there. How do you think about what's the operating model for the job side of this? You mentioned like delivering candidates. So how does that work? Like, let's say I'm a lawyer and I subscribe to your newsletter and I see fractional general counsel and I apply. Like, what does that look like?
Yeah. So first of all, it's entirely free for the fractionals. I'll get into more. So like basically, here's the evolution of the talent side of the business model. As I said, when I first launched it, I thought it was going to be a job board. With the way that job boards monetize is it's a job post fee, right? You pay $100 for a job post, you pay $200 for a job post, whatever. Very quickly learned that was not the right business model for a lot of reasons. Happy to go into that, but then I started like existential crisis. Like, okay, if that's not the business model, like how the hell am I going to make money? And I went through like almost like this, it's kind of like the 7 stages of grief of like trying to like
the trough of sorrow.
First denial, first like, okay, the job post will come. And then it's like, trough of sorrow is probably a better analogy. Thank you. It was Paul Graham. But so what I looked at next was the prevailing way that any talent marketplace makes money in the sort of the 1099 contractor world. So look at Upwork, look at TopTal, look at Fiverr, look at every other one of these, every shape and size. It's all a
percentage of services.
Exactly. They do the same thing, which is a percentage of services. So like for those, if you're listening that you don't know what that means, they take a 20, oftentimes 20, even more.
25,
I mean, there are some companies that take 40%, even 20%, I think is just like, especially when doing fractional work. And I was approached by these companies, I was like, good, see you later. Like, I'm not giving you 20% of my business. I can get my own business. And so what actually happens with those marketplaces is like the folks that are in the marketplace are the ones that are not maybe they don't have they're not skilled enough to have to get their own the business, and you're kind of left with like the best talent is not going to be interested because they need to give you an
interesting perspective.
They don't need to give you the 20% commission. And so and in doing fractional work, I was like, that's no for me. And I am building something that I want to use as a fractional worker myself. And so it just wasn't the route that I wanted to go down. And I even tried experimenting with it. It was the only time I ever got negative feedback from my audience was when I launched a couple roles that had it was only 10%, which was like so low in comparison. A 10% commission. And like the feedback I got from several folks, I've never had bad feedback like this before. Was like, this is super not cool. And I agree with it.
On the talent side, you got feedback.
On the talent side, correct. Yeah.
So you had put
I launched a couple roles that had like a disclaimer at the top that was like, for this role, Fractional Jobs is going to take a 10% commission,
Got it.
And it got pushed back, and I think for good reason. Anyway, so now, I am now searching for what is the right business model, and what I arrived at, and I'm really happy with, is a very simple referral fee model. So companies pay us a referral fee only if they hire a candidate that we send them. And I think it probably sounds obvious as I describe it, like, okay, like that seems simple. And it is quite simple, but it took a lot to arrive there. And there actually are certain things about that like would frankly like are not going to work at like a huge scale. And I'll have to figure that out when I get there. But for now, it works very, very well.
You know what's funny about that is the way you're describing is like the 10% vig basically is what you were initially positioned it as. I actually don't think that's that different from the referral fee that you're getting. I think it's probably just positioning of like the client, because I think some of the marketplaces, it's very clear that it is paid by, there's a economic relationship between the marketplace and the business.
Yeah.
And then there's an economic relationship between the marketplace and the talent, and almost keeping those separate, I feel like is sometimes the way to do it, which sounds like is what you're doing now of like and the benefit to the talent is if you are someone who is doing this work, you are getting the rate that you earn and deserve. Yeah. And the company is getting a benefit of getting great talent and high leverage from a sourcing perspective and are paying for that.
Yeah.
So
I think that's all true. I think there are some differences. Like when you do take a VIG, it is like you are taking it from both the company and the fractional at the same time. It's just how a VIG works, right? Is like, company pays X, fractional receives Y. That difference is the VIG, and like, and also worth noting that like, if you take a 10% or 20% in perpetuity of a relationship, it is going to add up to far, far more than what our referral fee is. Our referral fee is quite low. And so, and it's, by the way, with the reason we can price it so low is because it's subsidized by the ad revenue.
Which
is quite sense. Cool. So, yeah.
Very cool. Okay, great. So I want to shift a little bit and talk about, you building the business a bit. And then I want to get into some of advice you have for people who are, really starting out on fractional work. So you are a solopreneur, as they say. Tell me a little bit about how you have built the business, how you've thought about sourcing talent for Fractional Jobs as a company, and then your own like operating rhythm as well.
So I started the business with the intention of doing it solo, being a solopreneur, being a solo founder, and bootstrapping it. And so I think those are the two important like inputs into why I've constructed the company in this way. Being a solo founder was important to me because I had a co-founder in my last company. It ended absolutely terribly, and I have scar tissue from it, and I'll never do that again. Yeah. So for better or worse, I think I'm going to be a solo founder for the rest of my career. And then I'm bootstrapping it. I think bootstrapping like is just such a better fit for my lifestyle and the kind of business that I want to build. Yeah. My last company was venture backed, so I know what that looks like, and I just didn't want to do it. And so, those two things led me to starting, a business that was solo, that was bootstrapped, and that like had to be generating cash in order to fund itself. And so that's why, solopreneur. The way I'm constructing the team. So again, because bootstrapping, I am being very, maybe the word is like
mindful.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. That's a great word. Mindful of burn, right? And so what that means is like I have hired a team of offshore contractors based in Latin America, based in Nigeria, based in the Philippines, et cetera. And some of them are part-time. Some of them actually very part-time, like thinking like 5 hours a week even. And some are full-time. Oh, wow. And I like intend to scale my team largely through offshore contractors starting out part-time, and then having, as the needs grow, as the company grows, continuing to expand that relationship. Hiring fractional leaders soon. I think Q1 2026, I'm going to be hiring my first fractional leader. Fingers crossed. Nice. I think I'm at that place. I'm very excited about it.
You get to use your own services.
I cannot wait. It's going to be one of the highlights of the whole experience. I think and hope. And then maybe if and hopefully when we grow to the point where I need to bring on full-time W-2 employees and technically not be a solopreneur anymore, I'm super open to that as well. But I like keeping a lean team. I think it makes a lot of sense for today's day and age.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so I want to shift a little bit to your view on fractional, especially for folks who are listening who might be exploring this as a career path. You connect with thousands of people in the fractional space and hundreds of companies that are hiring for this type of work. How do you see fractional moving forward as part of this larger narrative around the future of work?
Yeah, like for better or worse, I've kind of bet this. Sorry to use the betting analogy again, but I bet my this stage of my career on this fractional work trend. I think obviously I see it growing incredibly. It has grown over the last couple of years. I see it continuing to grow incredibly. I, in a lot of ways, think of the fractional work movement as the successor to the remote work movement.
Yeah.
And it actually, like, fractional work, I don't think would really be possible today if not for the remote work movement and the catalyst that was COVID.
Yeah.
I expect to see many, many different kinds of roles getting fractionalized. I expect to see companies adopting fractional leaders as in some cases as the norm when starting out until they graduate into a full-time leader. It's funny. I think in hindsight, we're going to look back at how silly the idea of just assuming that every role to start should be 40 hours a week.
Yeah.
And like, you can't hire anyone until you have a need for them 40 hours a week. Like, early stage companies, I think the default should and will be starting out fractionally and then graduating into full time.
Yeah.
And then I think, like, the other trend that I actually just wrote a LinkedIn post about this like yesterday. I think the other trend that I'm expecting to play out is the interplay between like AI, what AI is going to do to the workforce, and how does that impact the fractional work movement. What we're seeing in the data right now is that AI seems to be best at I don't want to say replacing, because I don't want to get into that whole conversation, but like best at doing individual contributor work. So like the execution work. And so what the data shows is that like the types of jobs that are in significantly less demand now are like those individual contributor roles. And what we're seeing is that leadership level jobs, so directors, VPs, C-suites, are actually increasing, especially relative to the rest of the market, but is even absolutely, in absolute terms, increasing in demand. And the reason for that is we're going to, like, if we have armies of AI doing execution work, we're going to need leaders that are setting the direction and the strategy and the coordination and the taste. Frankly, it's like underappreciated what leaders have taste. That's I think that's actually a large part of what they bring to the table. And so to the extent that that's true, I expect fractional leaders to become really just like a core component of the future work for that reason alone. And so I'm excited about all this stuff.
That's awesome. Have you ever are you familiar with Clay Christensen and Jobs to Be Done?
He wrote a book.
Innovator's Dilemma.
Yeah, the Innovator's Dilemma. Yeah.
And then he created
the Jobs to Be Done framework.
Yeah.
I know the Jobs to Be Done framework well. I don't remember if I've read Innovator's Dilemma, though.
Jobs to Be Done is something I think about a lot, and I think it applies in this space of, rather than hiring, like, you hire full-time employees are a vehicle to get stuff done, but what you actually really are trying to do is like figure out what's the job to be done, meaning what's the outcome you're trying to achieve, and then ultimately it's figuring out what's the best talent model to do that. And I do think, to your point, I see fractional work really playing into that, and more so in the future.
Yeah, totally.
Great. So if you think about, okay, we're almost the end of 2025 right now when we're recording this, how would you recommend someone start out in this fractional world? Like, if someone is leaving a job or has been laid off or is just looking for some sort of transition professionally, how do you recommend someone get started here?
At the risk of pumping my own bags, I've written a lot of content about this, and you can certainly find my writing at fractionaljobs.io, where I spend most of my focus on writing is on like people that are new to fractional work and trying to break in and trying to assess whether they're going to be a good fit for fractional work. It's okay. So now, like, let me try and summarize. Like, if you're interested in doing fractional work, I think the place to start is in You want, and this is the PM in me thinking, you want to validate as best you can your ability to pick up clients, and because that is, as I said, that is the hardest part of the job. And as much as I think highly of fractional jobs and think it's going to continue to grow, it is not the number one way that folks get fractional work today. They get it through their own network. Yeah. And so like I wrote a playbook on how to get your first clients, and like 90% of the playbook is focused on leveraging your network in different ways, even privately, even if you're not ready to be public about your work, like how you can leverage your network to pick up your first client. And so like stepping back even before that, like if you're just interested in the idea of it, I think you want to validate that, like, can you have networking conversations that lead even to the possibility of, can this be someone that can hire me as a fractional head of, or, et cetera. And if you're getting that early signal, that's a good sign that you can start, breaking in either in a big way, or even a small way. One of the benefits of fractional work is like you could pick up a client for 5 or 10 hours a week, right? So it's actually, it doesn't have to be such a violent trend. Not violent, it's a weird word, but like such a large transition. It can be, it can be quite small where you're dipping your toe, in the water. Fractional work is hard. It's harder than doing an equivalent full-time job. And so you want to also be motivated enough to take on that challenge. And the motivation should come from like your whys, like why are you looking to break into it? If it's because like you can't find a full-time job, or like you think the idea of like, you think it's somehow going to be easier to balance 3 clients versus having 1 full-time job,
it's not.
You are unfortunately mistaken, right? And so like you need to be up for the challenge. You need to have the network to support, your lead generation, and you need to be ready to think like a business owner. And there's probably more, but I'll stop there.
No, that's great advice. One thing I talk about with what I describe as self-funded businesses, of building a business around your experience, your expertise, like what you're doing with fractional jobs, but also like what a lot of the people who subscribe to fractional jobs are doing on their own, is having a personal why and a business why.
Oh, yeah.
And the business why being, hey, you actually have to have a need in the market. So like, I loved how you described how you started out as a fractional head of product, and specifically working with founders who are not product people like that. There's a business why there. But then you also had, in starting fractional jobs, you had a personal why of, having run a venture-backed startup, wanting to, you seem like someone who is a founder at heart, but have sort of navigated what does that look like over your career. So it's pretty cool to hear.
Yeah.
So, well, Taylor, why don't we wrap with that? Thank you so much for taking the time. Loved chatting with you. We'll put the links in the show notes as well, but what's the best way for people to find you and follow Fractional Jobs?
Sure. So Fractional Jobs, you can find it at fractionaljobs.io. You can find me on LinkedIn at Taylor Crane. I post not too much. I think it's not so bad. So if you're interested, follow along. You can subscribe to our newsletter if you're interested in doing fractional work. And then if you're a founder interested in hiring fractional, you can contact me via the website, or just shoot me an email or a DM. I'd love to chat.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much. Appreciate you coming on.
Thank you so much, Chrissie.
Thanks for listening to Self-Funded. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to follow the show wherever you're listening so you don't miss what's coming next. I'd also love for you to leave a review and share what you're most excited about on your own self-funded journey. And if you want to go deeper, check out my Substack. You'll find the link below. Until next time, keep carving your own path.